is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 29 of the Dreams and Drive No Parking Podcast. Today our guest is Sette, who's a professional astrologist, spiritualist, and author. Ray shares his personal dream driving story, what led him into the field of astrology, and he also shares his personal keys to success. Some of the topics we talk about include the power of free will, how to know what your calling is, the importance of having a spiritual grounding, why solitude is important, how you can guard your energy and dreams, and last but not least, why loving yourself and what you do is key. I hope you enjoy listening to today's episode, and remember, if you'd like to be part of the Dreams and Drive community, all you have to do is visit dreamsanddrive.com/join. For today's show notes, all you have to do is go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 29. Enjoy. Hi, Ray. Welcome to this episode of Dreams and Drive No Parking. I'm so excited to have you on today as a guest.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm very excited to be here.
So one of the first questions that we ask all our guests, and if you listen to any of the previous podcast episodes, you'll know it. It's what inspired you as a child. Like, who was Ray as a young boy? If I were to ask your mother, someone who knew you, what would they say about you?
You know, as a child, I was extremely, extremely shy. I was also very introverted. However, one of my earliest memories is having the memory of really, really loving music. And I always found solace in music. You know, back in those days, we didn't have all the devices that we had right now, and we had a stereo turntable with headphones, and I would just put on the headphones and go into my own little secluded world where everything was all right. And music always inspired me, you know, and I say that because I always wanted to be able to, in some way, inspire other people, and I believe that with what I do just that.
So you didn't pursue music when you were in college, right? Originally, you weren't doing that.
When I was very young, I did want to pursue music, but for some reason it didn't come together for me, and instead I pursued art. And for most of my adult life, before I began this part of my journey, I was in the corporate world as a graphic designer.
Okay. But I think music and art go together if you think about it, right?
Absolutely. And I'm still very much connected to music and art as something for myself, as its own personal self-expression as well. So yes, very much so. Absolutely.
So how was life like as a graphic designer? Were you happy or were you just trudging along?
I honestly can say that for most of my professional career as a graphic designer, I was very happy. There was a time when I absolutely loved what I was doing. I was in an environment where I could travel the world. I was going to places where I normally wouldn't get to on my own. And I really, really, really loved what it is that I was doing. However, there was coming to a time where I began to not necessarily love it so much anymore. And even though I had a full-time profession, in my downtime, I always consulted with clients. I always gave readings, if you will. And it was very much a juggle between the two for a while, because my full-time job was very, very demanding. But I also know that I had this something that was very much my own and very much unique to me, even a little bit more so than working as a graphic designer. So I always did the two, and I was very dedicated to both, and I would never compromise the work that I was doing in either profession. And there was, as I said, there was a time where I was just becoming very burnt out, but also becoming very unfulfilled. And that really is what began myself weighing the options of which way I wanted to go with my professional life.
So what was that point where you realized that you wanted to pursue astrology?
The clincher was what we experienced on September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
I remember very distinctly being on the phone with one of my mentors at the time, who was my astrologer at the time, and it was someone that I confided with. And I remember being with her on the phone, and it was on September 12th, and we were talking about what happened, and I knew in my mind that I needed to do something where I could in some way make a difference in the world, bring some light, and bring some inspiration. And it was in that moment when I decided within myself, this is the path that I need to take. I need to allow myself to really explore the potential I have within myself as an astrologer, as an intuitive medium, more so as a spiritualist. These days, I do consider myself first and foremost a spiritualist. And once I made that decision, it took a few years before it actually came together, primarily because of my readiness. I needed to really be ready to pursue this and have the courage to do so. And, you know, we hear so many times that once we decide something within ourselves, the universe concedes to make it happen. And that's what very much happened for me.
So what's the proper terminology to use? So you said intuitive medium, you said spiritualist, you said astrologer, but how would you describe what it is that you do today?
Today, I consider myself a spiritualist. I use the tools of astrology, the psychic perception medium aspect of this profession. And for me, it's very all encompassing. When I work with clients individually, I call upon my points of reference with all those tools, if you will, to convey the information that I'm given from spirit. As a spiritualist, I also share philosophies, my understandings that come to me from spirit about what's going on in the world right now and how we can overcome these seemingly dark times that we are in right now.
Okay, so let's talk about those early days in building your brand and really pursuing this new profession or this new calling of yours. What were those early days like? Like, how did you go about establishing yourself and getting your first clients, or just overall building your brand?
Well, before I left corporate America, as I said, I was working with clients on a part-time basis. So I had somewhat of a client base. However, it really was not enough to sustain me as was my full-time profession. So I did some odd jobs working with some friends of mine to just kind of generate some extra income. However, what really got me through everything is my determination. And there was no doubt in my mind that this is the path that I was supposed to be on, that this is really why I came into human form, into this physical embodiment, to be exactly what I'm being and also what it is that I'm becoming. And it's not to say that there were some very dark moments, because there were. You know, I can't not say that as well. And I also know that any challenges and any darkness that I face, I know that much of it, I really brought it upon myself. And anyone who knows me knows my determination, and that I will stop at nothing to really get to where it is that I need to be going.
So you speak about, like, you knew that this was what you were supposed to do. Like, was there, I feel like that's something that a lot of us dream drivers feel like, you know, we each have like this feeling that we're meant to do something here on this earth. Is that something that you help people figure out, or is that something that, like, how do you help people realize or actualize that within themselves?
When I work with clients privately and one-on-one, I can look at their astrological composition. And in that composition, I say that is as unique as a snowflake. No two individuals have the same astrological configuration. I call it our spiritual DNA. And when we look at that, we see what exists beyond the physical realm. We look outside the boundaries of our physical world. We can see beneath the surface. We see the potential that lies beneath the surface. And what I strive to do is convey as much of the positive potentials in that composition as I can to inspire the individual. I will always first and foremost remind the individual, my client, that they have free will. And I will do whatever I am capable of doing to convey what I see that's inside of you. However, it's really up to you whether or not you're going to bring this to form, because I don't have the ability to override someone else's free will. I will share with you what I see in your chart, if you will, but also, too, what I am given from spirit. And, it's kind of interesting. Whenever I sit with someone, I look at their chart, and I talk about, say, for example, a profession that I see that they could be really, really good at. And, many times they'll say to me, that's something that I always wanted to do. However, I need to pay the bills, and I need to do this, and I have a family to support, this, that, and the other. And many times when we see something like that, we really see the individual's purpose and their potential and their path and whatever we might consider to be their destiny. It's when we as individuals do not allow ourselves to recognize that and allow ourselves the opportunity to move past fear and really embark upon that journey. That knowing whatever that might be for you, whatever that purpose is, and it's something that certainly is very personal, we always have the availability to recognize whatever that might be when we allow ourselves to do so. And many times we don't.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny that you say that. Just before we got onto Skype, I was talking to one of my friends, and I was telling her how, I'm doing the podcast. I've been trying to be consistent with it. I also have a full-time, 9-to-5 job. So I was just saying, how I am also perhaps wondering what's going to be my next step. And she asked me, was I looking? And I said, you know what? If I get a new job, I don't want to work for someone else, right? That was in my head. It's I couldn't imagine if I leave, I feel like it has to be me stepping out on faith and really doing what I think I'm called here to do, if that's the right word to say it. And it's just funny. I was really having this conversation 2 minutes before I got on Skype, and it's something that I think a lot of us are often scared of. How do we trust that we will I don't even know how to say it. How do we trust that everything will work out? Or
well, we know there really are no guarantees. And because if there were, let me just preface it by saying this. I remember years ago, I had someone calling me, inquiring about a private consultation with me, and they were asking me some questions, as, many new clients do. And one of the things that they said to me was, well, can you guarantee everything that you say will come true? And I said to him, I stopped him and I said, if you contact anyone, intuitive, astrologist, psychic, whatever, and they tell you that they will guarantee what they say will come true, you go running in the opposite direction. Because then that says, one, everything is written in stone, and it also indicates that you really have no free will. I as I said before, I can't override someone's free will, and I believe that we're not here to live out a script. I believe that before we've come into this embodiment, we've chosen, say, for example, we've chosen the possibilities of what it is that we choose to experience so that we can connect with our higher self and really remember ourselves as creative beings. I believe we choose possibilities. I don't believe that we map out a specific path that we are going to take. And I believe that in every moment we're constantly creating and co-creating whatever it is that we bring upon us based upon our free will. I will always encourage someone to recognize that if you allow yourself to stay very peaceful, to stay very grounded in whatever way that you need to do that, and allow yourself to be clear and free of distraction, you will know what it is that you're calling, because Spirit will tell you, Spirit will show you, Spirit will allow you to really recognize whatever that is. First and foremost, we need the desire to recognize that. Many times, if we don't have if there is fear that prevents that, it's just not going to happen. But we first and foremost, we need to establish that desire through intention to have that realization. And then we just have to trust.
So you said three things that I think are really interesting, and I want to ask you about them. Is you have to have like that peace of mind, and how does one, you know what? I'll be honest with you. So I grew up. My mother, when we were younger, I grew up Jehovah Witness. That was like our faith. So. I wasn't baptized or anything, but I went to Kingdom Hall with my mother, and I learned Bible principles, and I was very like, thinking about it now, I used to like make little sermons in my room and preach to my teddy bears or whatever. But so that has always been like I guess what I grew up knowing. But personally, I don't feel like I've ever really had not a religion, but I guess a spiritual side. And lately, I've tried my podcast. People listening are gonna be like, "What is Raina saying?" Lately, I've tried to develop the habit of praying. Right, just the simple act of being at peace. And for me, it's like a part. I see it as a ritual, like speaking to God or speaking to a higher being, and I've really tried to just develop that habit. And I've just found for the past 2 weeks that I've been doing it, it really has just been a moment of peace for me. And I really feel like that was something that was lacking in myself. I had no sense of spirituality, and I don't know if that's something that you can build, if everyone has it, but I definitely feel like that's something within myself that's missing. And I wonder, like, do you think people can find spirituality and find that peace? Like, is there something that you can do to seek that in your own life?
Well, considering that we are really spiritual beings having a human spirit experience, certainly that opportunity is available to all of us. We have to begin with the desire. We have to have the desire to discover that and allow ourselves to have the discovery process. And once that happens, as I said before, once we make the choice, once we establish that choice through intention within ourselves, Spirit, the universe, whatever it is that you want to call it, the powers that be, they will concede to that, and they will absolutely show you the way if you allow yourselves to recognize what it is that they are showing you. See, many times we think it all has to come through in certain ways, like we already have these preconceived notions as to how something is supposed to come together or should come together, and that it needs to come together logically. Many times, the greatest opportunities come through illogical ways, and ways that are shown to us that are really outside of the box. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I got a little off topic with that question, but
that's okay. You know what? And actually, whenever we discuss anything spiritual, this is actually how it goes. We may begin down one road, and then we branch off into so many different directions. Mm-hmm. One of the things for me to do what I do, to the level that I do what I do, first and foremost, I need to absolutely be certain that I do whatever it is that I need to do in my power to keep myself clear, to keep myself peaceful, and to keep myself grounded. The first hour and a half of my day is dedicated to meditation and prayer. I do not touch the computer. I do not touch any electronics in that time. It is the time that I connect with Spirit, God, higher beings, whatever it is that you want to call that energy, so that I can establish the vibration of my day, so that I am at the highest potential I can be within myself to do whatever it is that I need to do in that day, and to do it from the best of my ability to the highest of my ability, connecting to my higher self.
So is this something you say you do this every day?
Absolutely, yes. Oh, almost every day. There's sometimes on a Sunday where I just want to kind of like lay in bed,
Yeah.
get up, have some coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and 98% of the time, yes, I can honestly say that's how I begin my day. For me, it's a priority. It's very much part of my spiritual survival, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Like, why is that spiritual? You said spiritual survival, right? Like, why is that so
Correct.
important? Especially if you're somebody who is in the process of finding yourself.
When an individual is in that process of self-discovery, I always suggest that, one, they allow themselves to have a solitary experience. You see, I believe that spirit is available to all of us. Spirit can see the bigger picture. Spirit will always lovingly guide us, direct us, when we allow spirit to do that. And those connections with spirit really allow us to have these very human experiences from a place of greater fulfillment. That brings us the fulfillment. It brings us the joy and the love that is very much part of our human survival, if you will. Although some may believe that they can survive without love and without spirit. However, as I said, we're really spiritual beings having this human experience. And when we connect to that source, which is really the source that created us all, we allow ourselves to recharge our batteries, if you will. It's kind of like, if you can only use a battery so much before the battery becomes depleted, then some batteries you need to recharge them. It's kind of like the same, it's almost the same thing spiritually, especially because we're very much electrical beings. Unless we allow ourselves to be spiritually recharged, we become very, very depleted. We can certainly begin to break down. Our well-being isn't what it can be, and we begin to deteriorate and very much so deplete.
That is, I am just thinking, as you were talking, I was just thinking about moments in like my own life where you know where you're just like running towards a dead end, right? It's kind of like the feeling of knowing that you need to do something different if you want that energy level to go up. But I feel like sometimes we don't prioritize that in our lives. I know a lot of people that they just run themselves dead, and then they don't realize like what's happening until it's too late. But I want to ask you a question, Ray. So
Sure.
you said earlier, or I think I was reading in your bio about how like you always felt like you had this gift, like this gift of. Let me ask you, what would you say your gift is, and how did you figure out that it was a gift?
Well, regarding that matter, one of the things that I always emphasize is, and this is just for me personally, I do not believe that I demonstrate or that I have a quote unquote gift.
Okay.
I believe that I have an ability that every one of us is capable of tapping into. It's just like we all have vocal cords. However, we can't all sing like Andrea Bocelli. It's really based upon our purpose, and why we are here is when we really develop and express to a greater potential certain abilities. See, if I, and again, this is just my interpretation. I believe if I were here and I've sat here and talked about my gifts, one, I could certainly be speaking from a place of ego. But also, that would suggest that spirit, God, whoever, plays favorites. That God will give you something that they won't give to me. Since it was probably about around 2004, and it has to do with certain alignments that were taking place in the heavens at the time, where we began to notice an increase in the media and television of these paranormal shows, of the shows portraying psychic mediums, psychics, and so forth. And what was happening at that time is that Spirit was really giving us the opportunity to become much more aware of the metaphysical, that transcends the physical senses, and that there is another realm of experience beyond all of this. You see that every one of us has the potential and the ability to connect with. We're just not always taught to recognize that. And also, too, in order to really understand what Spirit is sharing with you and to really trust what it is that you're being given, we need to be very, very clear, very peaceful, and very grounded. And that's when you know you can trust what you are being given, because you will know in that peacefulness, you will know what is real and perhaps what is unreal, if you will.
So along that lines, I know you talked about what you do personally, but do you have any tips for our audience? Like, just
Sure.
some tips that they can use in their lives, whether they are highly spiritual or not. Like, what are some tips that they can do to stay grounded and find that peace and stay clear?
First and foremost, my strongest recommendation is always to discover meditation. When we allow ourselves the experience of meditation, which it really is a discipline, so it's not something that always comes easily. It is very much a discipline. However, it is very much worth, the rewards are definitely worth the effort that you will place into that discipline and that dedication. Meditation is such a powerful experience. And when it's done on a regular basis, we will allow ourselves to be very, very clear and connect to that peacefulness. Because when we're in that state of meditation, we connect to the vibrations of Spirit.
It's funny. Yep. I once tried to meditate. This is the funniest joke I tell my sister all the time. I once tried to meditate and I fell asleep. So I was like, I must not have been meditating. I must have been sleeping or trying to sleep. But are there any good resources that anyone
Absolutely. When I was in my early 20s, I was introduced to this meditation program. It's called the Silva Method. It's a program that trains you and guides you in how to meditate. I believe to learn meditation effectively, it is beneficial to work with an instructor. And that is a suggestion that I always offer to anyone who certainly does ask me. And with that, I always add, do some research on your own and recognize when something resonates with you, because there are many programs out there. I will always share with you what's worked for me. And I will always say, just like I will always say, you don't have to take my word for anything. No one has to believe anything that I say. Recognize what resonates with you and follow through with that. But also, too, really make it a point to incorporate this very powerful modality into your lives and then observe how your lives begin to improve.
I think that's a good segue into let's focus now on you and some of the things that you've accomplished. So I know you have your book, The Planets Align So Rare, 12 Dimensions of the Human Potential. What inspired you to write that?
I always knew that I had a book inside of me, and I always knew that I wanted to create something that could inspire another person. And I had these ideas in my mind. And actually, this experience is really what led me to leaving corporate America and embarking on this in the profession that I am right now. I remember in the summer of 2005, I was out at an outdoor concert, and again, going back to how music is very inspirational. And I just remember being very much in the flow and very much in oneness with the music and what it is that I was experiencing. And I was given by Spirit the title of the book and how I was to construct it. And it came to me very, very clearly. I heard very clearly that title. And the words might have been a little bit off, but I remember writing it down on a Post-it note when I got home, and I think I still have that Post-it note somewhere. And from that moment, within a few weeks, probably about 6 weeks, I took that leap of faith. I left corporate America and I embarked on this journey. And that writing process was very organic for me. It took about a year, almost exactly a year, to complete it all. And I was very determined to really create this material and just offer possibilities as to how an individual can perhaps rise above some struggles or some doubts that they may have within themselves. Because I've had these experiences, and let me share them with you so that perhaps you might see something within yourself that can just cause you to see the potential that's already inside you and allow yourself, without fear, to really express that.
Is there a story that you could possibly tell that illustrates that?
You mean?
So a story about, you said that you wanted to share stories about you know what, let me just ask you the next question I had, because I think it relates, it relates to the, it's funny, I'll tell you the truth, I feel like I'm so, because this all this stuff is so new to me, so I'm trying to stay focused, but my mind is like thinking of all these questions that I want to ask you, because I just think it's so interesting.
That's your potential of being a good journalist, that's all. You get it?
Yeah.
That's all right. And the more that you can keep yourself grounded, all of that will come together effortlessly. Give it a shot.
Okay. I'll just read from the paper. I was just going to say, so like, what are ways that we can like develop our own inner potential? Because I think that a lot of times we don't trust our intuition. So you know how you said that you had the idea for the book and it came to you and you wrote it down on a Post-it and you acted on it. I think a lot of times we have these intuitions, we have these things come to us, and we don't act on it. How do you know which intuitions you should act on and which ones aren't, or do you just know it and the ones that you act on are the ones that are supposed to be acted on?
Have you ever had an experience where you just know something? I mean, you just know something without the shadow of a doubt. When you can allow yourself to be at that point, you just know. And I will add that will come to us, but we need to allow ourselves to be very clear, very centered, very peaceful within ourselves, and free of distractions. Many times I have experiences during private sessions when individuals are at crossroads in their lives, and they weigh a lot of these options within themselves, and there's a lot of concern there as to really what is the outcome going to be. In addition to the first suggestion of incorporate meditation so that you can stay grounded and you can stay peaceful, I encourage them to allow themselves to have a solitary experience so that they can be free of the distractions from other people that might be trying to tell them what they should do and what they should not do. Because that is very much a distraction, and that can interfere very much so with our trusting that knowingness. Because many times what happens is that other individuals will begin to project their fears upon you, which will cause you to doubt and to be uncertain as to what it is that you need to do for yourself. So having that solitary experience allows you to just connect within yourself, to connect with spirit. Because many times what we need to do can be what some might perceive to be highly illogical. And in that illogic, if you will, there is great potential. But that is something that needs to be trusted. When I was going through this experience myself, I maybe one or two people I shared my desires and my ideas and my endeavors and what it is that, I really would what I was choosing to do for myself. And it wasn't until after I took that leap of faith where I announced it to the world. And quite honestly, most people thought I just took leave of my senses and I was going to completely come undone. And I was like, well, that's your opinion, and I'm good to go. I got to do what I got to do. And the rest is history. And again, it's not to say that there were not challenges, and there were some very dark moments. And I understand also too how I allowed myself to get into those dark moments. And one being, I didn't recognize, because much of what I know, I very much learned through experience. I really didn't have anyone to guide me. I've had spiritual mentors and individuals who helped me along my spiritual journey. However, some of the challenges that I experienced in doing this sort of work, because when you're dealing with what transcends the physical, when you're dealing with the metaphysical, when you're dealing with the paranormal, it doesn't really come with a lot of instruction manual, and much of what we find out there is very much sensationalized. So it's very much a personal learning experience. And one of the things that so many of these programs that we see on television, they really don't talk about what is required of ourselves to keep ourselves very peaceful and very clear, but also too, we need to request from spirit the element of protection to keep us free and protected from dark forces, because there's a lot of dark energy out there. And I don't say that to instill fear, as long as we have the awareness, because no dark force has any power over us as long as we don't give it that power. You see what I mean?
No, I definitely see what you mean. And I was jotting down some notes as you were talking. And I think the one thing that stood out to me was when you said that you didn't tell people what you were going to do. You didn't tell a lot of people until you actually did it. And I think that's something that I've been like, you aren't the first. I feel like this whole conversation now is just, it's feeling so surreal to me, because that is not like, within the past like week or so, I've been hearing that same message of like, shut your mouth. And that's how I'm interpreting it, because I think just something that a lot of people, maybe just people like me, I have a problem of over professing what I'm going to do before I do it. And then, like you said, you get all those dark energies. You get people who are projecting their own fears, people who are trying to deter you, and then you end up not doing it. And I've been having this conversation with myself. It's like, what do I need to start doing differently in order to see different results? And that's why I said I started, having this morning ritual of praying every morning. And I've realized that I think I found comfort in professing my every move to the world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It became like a defense mechanism for me, something that I hid behind open thoughts, if that makes any sense.
And sometimes we do that, yeah.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, I just felt like all this emotion. And sometimes I feel like I'm always feeling emotion when I hear other people saying things. I don't know if that's just like me personally, but that was definitely something that I needed to hear. And hopefully people listening in, that's something that spoke to them too.
Whenever, as I said, whenever we decide something within ourselves, spirit will always, always, always show us the way. We just don't trust it, and we don't recognize it, and then we don't trust when we are being given. Something within you has already decided something, that you are choosing to have a higher experience, and because of that choice within yourself, you're being given all of this information and this guidance. There's no accident that we're sitting right now having this discussion, and you're having these experiences within yourself, and this is what we're talking about. You see what I mean? And it's because of what you've chosen within yourself that allows it all to come together.
I feel like I want to cry. Why do I feel like this? This is so weird.
No. You're having a surge of emotions, which many, as I said, we are all connected to spirits. We are all very psychic. And many individuals, perhaps like yourself, in these last few years are having heightened psychic experiences, if you will. And that could be what you're experiencing right now as well. I'd say it could be part of it. But also, too, you're connecting with your own desires, with your own sense of greatness within yourself that is encouraging you to really recognize that and bring it to form. That could also be Spirit's way of connecting you with the fulfillment of connecting with your desires. You see what I mean?
I think that really hits the nail on the head because I was having this discussion with a coworker where she asked me just flat out. She said, Raina, why are you here? Like, why are you working here? And I was kind of taken aback for a second because you know how, like, you just work with someone all day long? You guys never have that discussion. It's like, hey, we're doing our job. And then one day she just said, like, why are you here? And I couldn't answer her. I really couldn't answer her. And she was just like, what do you really love to do? And I couldn't answer her that. I couldn't answer her there either. And I felt like within myself, I know that I have that potential for greatness, and it's something that I've always felt within myself. And when you were saying, you know how early in our discussion you were talking about when you just know something, like I remember there was this moment, and this might sound very egotistical, but I remember when I was applying to colleges by accident. It was so funny. Like, we were supposed to be going to the College of New Jersey. You're from New Jersey, right? I'm from New
Jersey.
I am. I'm from New Jersey as well. I grew up in Orange. So my mom, my aunt, my little cousin were supposed to be traveling to the College of New Jersey. But somehow we get lost, and we ended up at Princeton, right? We ended up at Princeton, and when I took a walk on campus, because it was my junior year or something like that, like we had to do one Princeton or one college visit before coming back to school. So Princeton ended up being mine. I was like, I'm going to go here. That was like a feeling I had. I said, I'm going to go here. And I remember applying. I applied to all these schools, and I never doubted that I wouldn't get into Princeton. And like, I got into Princeton, and it was one of those things that like I wasn't surprised. And so when you said like when you have a moment where you just know, that comes to me as one of those moments where I never doubted it. Like, there have been times where I've just like never doubted that I would succeed in a situation like that.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, that story you shared, how you were intending to go one place, but you ended up somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, I do see that as spiritual and divine intervention there, nudging you perhaps in a different direction.
And you know what I just thought about? I've never made this connection before. So when I was younger, like I was about 10 months old, I was in a really, really bad car accident. So my mom, my dad, and me, we were in a car accident. My dad was like the one that ended up being like the best out of all of us. My mom had her whole left side of her body was like messed up, and she was in a coma for 6 weeks. I had a fractured skull as a baby, so up until I want to say like maybe 9 or 10, I had to go to like the neurologist every month to get my to get like a CAT scan or whatever it was to make sure that my skull was healing correctly. And I just thought about that. Like, I got into my parents were going to New York to pick me up. So they were on their way home. Do you know 280?
Yo, of course, absolutely.
Do you know where that big in Kearney where the post office is?
Yep, yeah, I know where you're talking about.
That's where they got into a car accident. It was like a rainy night. And so, you know, we all survived, but I just thought about, like, I call this podcast Dreams in Drive, right? Like, no parking. Don't get in a whole car. The car metaphor has been one that has always stayed with me my whole life. And it's just, I never made the connection until now. Like, whoa, like, maybe, like, maybe the reason why, like, I'm doing this now and I really have stepped into doing this podcast is it was something that I've just been avoiding for so long, although I love talking to people, is, like, the whole idea of Dreams and Drive. I think that kind of sums up, like, how I came into myself.
Sure.
Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. You know, when we have experiences like that, especially when we are very young, you know, there's really no accidents in accidents.
Mm-hmm.
There is a divine purpose. I don't believe something has to happen, and there are times when something does happen, there is a greater purpose to it, and it's not to take away the devastation or the challenging challenge in any of these experiences. I'm not saying that. However, I do recognize that in those experiences, look how some people, they have such horrific experiences and they rise to greatness. They rise to prominence. You see, and it's because something within themselves has chose that. And this is an opportunity. This is a potential that every one of us is capable of embarking upon. I believe that we absolutely have the innate ability instilled in us to achieve greatness with whatever that might be. Because I believe that when we do that, we really we connect with spirit and divinity. Because everything, if you just look everywhere in the world, everything is being created, and it's being constantly created over and over again. To me, I see that, I observe that as being divinity, with whatever that might be. And I don't always like to use the quote-unquote word God, because I believe that if we put a label on something that is all-encompassing, then we begin to reduce the essence of it. And I don't believe that in our human vocabulary, we have words that can really convey the gravity of that being and that presence. However, it is absolutely everywhere. It's all-encompassing. And that creative potential, that source of divinity, is very much part of our birthright and incorporated and instilled in all of us. Unfortunately, in many experiences, the powers that be do not want us to recognize that. And I do believe that that is something, this true understanding, this real knowing, is coming to form, is being shared with us in the times that we are in right now. We are so profoundly being given the opportunity in the times that we're in right now to really recognize this creative potential, this God source, if you need to call it that, is very much part of who we are and part of this human experience.
The question that came to mind is, do you feel like some people, because you mentioned that, there are some forces that don't want people to realize this within themselves. Do you believe in the idea that some people are cursed? Like, I don't know if that's like the right terminology or if that's the right way to define it.
Let me see if I can explain this. To use those words, when someone says that we are cursed, that says that something, some power, some source, something outside ourselves has inflicted some sort of evil upon us, and we are doomed for bad luck, if you will. I don't believe that anything in the outside world has any power over us if we do not offer it the power. Let me see if I can use this as an example. I can't tell you how many times I've had the experience where a client comes to me and they've gone to a reader, a gypsy, if you will, and that individual is telling them that they are cursed. And the first thing that I will say to them is, one, certainly you're not cursed. But also, two, if you're going to give power to that, then you are cursed. It's whatever we give the power to. When we give our power away to these forces that we believe are greater than us, then perhaps we may have the experience that we are being cursed. It's really whatever we bring upon ourselves. And many times it's an individual that is very much steeped and caught up in negativity. And perhaps they don't want to recognize what energy that they are saying in motion. And perhaps they want to use a convenient excuse of saying, well, I'm cursed. That may sound harsh.
That makes a lot of sense, though.
However, whatever comes to us in this human experience, it's based upon the karma we have set in motion. It's all based upon the energy that we set in motion. Nothing in this experience, in this human form, nothing happens by chance. I do not believe that anything is random. It's in chapter 3 of my book. I state, and I'm going to see if I can quote this, I state that if we allow ourselves to recognize as well as acknowledge every thought that we have in every moment of every day, and the words that we choose to express those thoughts, we will absolutely see how we create all our experiences.
Wow. That's hard, though, because think about how many thoughts and how many... Like, that means you have to really focus your thoughts.
I did not say it was easy. However, it is not impossible. When we have that will and determination, one of my earliest lessons, if you want to call it a lesson, when I was in my early 20s, was to recognize every thought that I have and to recognize the power behind my words. And to this day, however many years it is later, and I've been around for a while, because of my determination to acknowledge that is why I'm capable of having this experience. I didn't say it was easy, and I did not say that it would come effortlessly. However, with the discipline and the determination and the desire to recognize these creative possibilities, it is not impossible.
What kind of sacrifices did you have to make in order to get to that level where you were actively listening to each thought and being aware of each word?
As I said, it's very much a discipline, and in those early times of my younger developments, I was I was meditating 3-4 times a day. Now I will add that optimum meditation only needs about 10 or 15 minutes. You don't need to be sitting hours and hours at a time in meditation. If you are meditating effectively, you only need about 10 or 15 minutes. So I was very determined to meditate as often as I can during the day, read as much inspirational material as I possibly can, learn as much as was available to me, so that I can truly understand the power of my mind and the power of my being. I had and still have a great sense of determination to rise above anything in this human physical form. And many find that when I say to them that I do still have challenges. I'm not void of heartache or challenges or any sort of obstacles. I also will add that a lot of that I do create myself. However, I have a very strong sense of determination to rise above anything that I bring to my experiences.
So throughout your whole journey, Ray, like, what do you think has been, the greatest lesson you learned about yourself?
To love myself. To really, truly love myself. The greatest, but also the most difficult. And I'm still haven't quite gotten there. I'm pretty close. And the awareness of loving myself is so profound, not only for myself, but for every one of us. The awareness of loving ourselves is more profound than we could possibly imagine. And I did not understand how encompassing that experience was until I had the experience myself. And then I was like, okay, I get it.
The experience of loving yourself?
Correct.
What do you mean when you finally reached the moment where you felt that you loved yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You get it?
I'm wondering, like, do I love myself? Because I just thought about it. It's like, what is the feeling of loving yourself? And if you can't describe it, I wonder, like, have I?
It is very difficult to convey and to put into
Mm-hmm.
words. If we've ever had the experience of really, truly, unconditionally loving another, we've scratched the surface of what it's like to love ourselves.
Mm.
And again, this does not come from a place of ego, and I have to emphasize that as well. This has nothing to do with ego, self-righteousness, or anything like that. This comes from a place of pure love that is instilled in us from the power that created us.
I feel like when people listen to this, they're going to be thinking too, just like I'm thinking.
And this is part of what I do. What I do,
Mm-hmm.
I inspire, I provoke thoughts, I encourage everyone to recognize the potential, certainly within themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and always recognize whatever resonates inside of you. You know, as I said before, I will always emphasize: you don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to take my word for anything. I will share with you what I know, because I walked the walk and talked the talk, and I've walked through the fire. And just as though you don't have to agree with me, but just as though you know everything you know about what you know, so do I.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can allow ourselves, especially in the times that we are in, to just honor that within each other, because in every one of us, even those who choose to create such horrific things in the world, we all do have that potential of divinity within us and that potential of love.
So you talked a lot about like challenges and walking through the fire, but can you mention like what you think your biggest challenge now maybe, or what your biggest challenge may have been in the past when it comes
Well,
when it came to finding who you are and building this mission and really pursuing um this ability of yours.
I've noticed that in the time that I'm in right now, because I believe I am accelerating and I am advancing and I am moving forward, and there's a turning point in my life where one of my greatest desires is to really address the masses and to speak to as many people as I possibly can, certainly from a place of love, and to offer them the opportunity to recognize the potential that's inside of them. And because I'm at a turning point, I'm finding that a lot of dark forces are coming after me and wanting to discourage and stop me from really moving forward. And I will not give in to that. I will not give in to any of that. And I myself right now find I am having a very solitary experience, and
Mm-hmm.
I honor that. I also know that in those moments of silence is when some of the most profound insights come to me that
Mm-hmm.
I feel I'm being prepared to share with the masses, to inspire them to see the greatness that is inside of every one of us. Every one of us.
So let's wrap it up, Ray. I'm gonna ask you what's next. Like, what do you hope to accomplish with for in order to reach this goal of yours? Like, what next
Sure.
few months, few years,
When
decade?
I when I was in corporate when I was in the corporate world, I had the opportunity to travel to many places around the globe, places that I normally wouldn't have the opportunity to visit. And I knew in that time that I was being prepared for something. And one of my greatest goals now, and I am going to pursue this as much as I can, is to travel around the world and just to speak to whoever chooses to hear whatever it is that I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and bring love, light, peace, whatever it is that you want to call it, to the four winds. And I've always said that the universe is the limit. I haven't gotten there yet,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on my way.
Well, I am wishing you, or I am breathing positivity alongside you
Many
as you
blessings.
embark towards that.
One of the things that I will say to anyone
Mm-hmm.
who has the desire to pursue their dreams: absolutely love what it is that you do, because it is that love that it will bring it to you. Stay in a place of love. Love to the nth degree what it is that you are being. And all that you need to make that happen will just come to you.
That's a great way to end it. So let's go to our lightning round. So this is the part of our interview where I'll give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And the prompt is this is in line with the car metaphor. So I'll give you the gear shifts in the car that goes with our whole dreams and drive metaphor. Okay.
Okay.
So the first word is park.
Go within.
Reverse.
Decline.
Neutral.
Complacency.
The last one is drive.
Take off.
Oh, I like that. It's the first time someone has said that. Take off. Not even
There
accelerate. Take off.
There you go.
All right. And then last but not least, we have our keys to success. So, if you want to be a successful dream driver, you have to have the right keys in order to get started and, be prepared for your journey. So what are 3 things that you think all dream drivers need to have in their toolkit before they hit the road?
As I said, first and foremost, absolutely have a sense of profound love for what it is that you are doing and what you are being. 2, absolutely trust what you know is right for you. 3, do not allow anyone to interfere with your clarity and your knowing and what you know is right for you.
That last one is so hard. I feel like, especially now being being a young professional and still my parents still having like a big influence on my life in some ways, it's so hard. Like so many things I've wanted to do in my life, I feel like they've always been that source of like, no, don't do it, Raina. It's not the right thing. And that's my biggest battle, I feel like, is telling my parents, like, I have to, like, trust me, I have to get away and I have to develop my own sense of self. And I know for a lot of people listening in, they may also be at that stage too.
Absolutely.
All right, Ray. Well, I thank you so much for this conversation. I think that it was so insightful, and I think it was very reflective. I think as people listen, I hope that they take our conversation and really reflect upon how they can really start pursuing and gaining that mental clarity and that, that clear-headedness that you talk about. Because I think if we are in tune with our thoughts, we really can achieve that inner potential within all of us.
It's all within, and it's all within us. We all have the potential.
Thank you for listening to episode 29. I hope you enjoyed listening to Ray share his dream driving story and keys to success. To join the Dreams and Drive community, visit dreamsanddrive.com/join. Please make sure to subscribe on iTunes or SoundCloud and leave a rating on what you think of today's episode. Thank you for listening today. I appreciate you. And last but not least, if you'd like today's show notes, all you have to do is visit dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 29. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and I'll speak to you soon.